Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm recording my synthesis and vocal readings of the passages most prominent to me from Book 55 in my Book Week series, Alan Watts' This Is It. When we're having a hard time, it's common and compelling to believe that if we change our circumstances, just fix X, Y, and Z, that we'll feel better. Let's consider another approach to having a hard time. Something that may even seem counterintuitive at first. What if instead of changing our life circumstances so that the way that we feel about them might change, we accept and examine what has organically emerged in our life experience? There are a number of different ways to arrive at acceptance. We can reach acceptance by remembering that we only know peace in contrast with conflict, light in contrast with darkness, expansion in contrast with contraction. We can also reside in a place of acceptance by contemplating the parameters of our gratitude. Are we only grateful for the elements of being alive that we would associate with success, that we would identify with striving for? Or are we also grateful for the elements of being alive that allow us to know that we might want to strive for better? Imagine something you really love. I'll do so also. What pops into your head? Now imagine everything that made it so. Did it become what it is only due to pleasurable means? No, I don't think so. Can we extend our gratitude to everything that may have contributed to it becoming what it is? When we recollect everything that our moments of struggle might imply and be implied by, we reconnect to a larger harmony, and we become much more than a little voice in our head, judging, criticizing, or approving of, deciding that one thing is okay, but another thing is not. When we allow ourselves to recollect relationship between and with everything, relationship that we can see and relationship that we cannot, we open a sense of ease to ourselves. And it's not just an ease that we get to experience when we're feeling pleasure. It's an ease that remains in our foundation even while we're experiencing difficulty. Without further ado, I'll move on toward the vocal readings from this wonderful book. Page 13. Contradictory as it may sound, it seems to me that the deepest spiritual experience can arise only in moments of a selfishness so complete that it transcends itself, by the way down and out, which is perhaps why Jesus found the companionship of publicans and sinners preferable to that of the righteous and respectable. It is a sort of first step to accept one's own selfishness without the deception of trying to wish it were otherwise. For a man who is not all of one piece is perpetually paralyzed by trying to go in two directions at once. As a Turkish proverb puts it, he who sleeps on the floor will not fall out of bed. And so, when the sinner realizes that even his repentance is sinful, he may perhaps for the first time come to himself and be whole. Spiritual awakening is the difficult process whereby the increasing realization that everything is as wrong as it can be flips suddenly into the realization that everything is as right as it can be, or better, everything is as it can be. Page 35 to 36. Cosmic consciousness is a release from self-consciousness. That is to say, from the fixed belief and feeling that one's organism is an absolute and separate thing, as distinct from a convenient unit of perception. For if it becomes clear that our use of the lines and surfaces of nature to divide the world into units is only a matter of convenience, then all that I have called myself is actually inseparable from everything. This is exactly what one experiences in these extraordinary moments. It is not that the outlines and shapes which we call things and use to delineate things disappear into some sort of luminous void. It simply becomes obvious that though they may be used as divisions, they do not really divide. However much I may be impressed by the difference between a star and the dark space around it, I must not forget that I can see the two only in relation to each other, and that this relation is inseparable. Page 56 through 57. Now, if we examine the records of mystical experience, or of what I am now calling the experience of relationship, we shall find that, time and time again, it is connected with spiritual poverty. That is to say, with giving up the ownership of everything, including oneself or one's consciousness. It is the total abandonment of proprietorship on the external world of nature and the internal world of the human organism. This does not come about through the virtue of will, through one's own strength, which, in any case, is not one's own. It comes about from the insight that there is no proprietor, no inner controller. This becomes evident as soon as the consciousness, which has felt itself to be the inner controller, starts to examine itself and finds out that it does not give itself the power of control. Its push is nature's pull. It is a loop in an endless knot, where a pull from the right is a push from the left. When it thus becomes clear that I own nothing, not even what I have called myself, it is as if, to use St. Paul's words, I had nothing, but possessed all things. When I can no more identify myself with that little man inside, there's nothing left to identify with, except everything. There's no longer the slightest contradiction between feeling like a leaf on a stream and throwing one's whole energy into responsible action, for the push is the pull. And thus, in using intelligence to change what has hitherto been the course of nature, one has the realization that this is a new bend in the course, and that the whole flood of the stream is behind it. Page 71 to 72. Thinker and thoughts are the same. After all, if you begin to let your mind think what it likes, the next moment it wants to interfere with itself. So let it do that. So long as you let it think what it wants, at each successive moment, there's absolutely no effort, no difficulty in letting it go. But the disappearance of the effort to let go is precisely the disappearance of the separate thinker, of the ego, trying to watch the mind without interfering. Now, there's nothing to try to do, for whatever comes up, moment by moment, is accepted, including not accepting. For a second, the thinker seems to be responding to the flow of thought with the immediacy of a mere image, and then suddenly it dawns that there's no mirror and no image. There's simply the flow of thought, one after another, without interference. And the mind really knows itself. There's no separate mind, which stands aside and looks at it. Page 104. Because the essentials of Zen can never be accurately and fully formulated, being an experience and not a set of ideas, it is always possible to be critical of anything anyone says about it, neither putting up nor shutting up. Any statement about Zen or about spiritual experience of any kind will always leave some aspect, some subtlety unexpressed. No one's mouth is big enough to utter the whole thing. Page 138. To become the sensations as distinct from having them engenders the most astonishing sense of freedom and release. For it implies that experience is not something in which one is trapped, or by which one is pushed around, or against which one must fight. The conventional duality of subject and object, knower and known, feeler and feeling, is changed into a polarity. The knower and the known become the poles, terms, or phases of a single event which happens, not to me or from me, but of itself. The experiencer and the experience become a single, ever-changing, self-forming process, complete and fulfilled at every moment of its unfolding, and of infinite complexity and subtlety. It is like not watching, but being, a coiling arabesque of smoke patterns in the air, or of ink dropped in water, or of a dancing snake which seems to move from every part of its body at once. I'm on page 146, and this is my final reading from this book. The world is love to him who treats it as such, even when it torments and destroys him, and in states of consciousness where there's no basic separation between the ego and the world, suffering cannot be felt as malice inflicted upon oneself by another. By the same logic, it might seem that without the separation of self and other, there can be no love. This might be true if individuality and universality were formal opposites, mutually exclusive of one another, if, that is, the inseparability of self and other meant that all individual differentiations were simply unreal. But in the unitary or non-dualistic view of the world I've been describing, this is not so. Individual differences express the unity as branches, leaves, and flowers from the same plant. And the love between the members is the realization of their basic interdependence. Next week, I return to externalizing study of a book a week with book 59, Panic Free, the 10-day program to end panic, anxiety, and claustrophobia by Tom Bunn. I'll be putting full-time, disciplined effort into offering treasures from these books in order that Biocadence members who don't have the capacity to read at such a high volume can still benefit from the tools that these books offer. And in order that Biocadence members can more aptly determine which books relate most closely to their unique life circumstances, and thereby be more motivated to read those books thoroughly themselves. Each weekday, I'll read for 2 to 3 hours, isolate the treasures that I find in that reading, loop in what other authors have had to say about the focus topics addressed in those treasures, then package this in a comprehensive way so that Biocadence members can spend 3 to 10 minutes per day on the material that took me many, many hours to maneuver through. Additionally, here are some of my future plans. In September, I'll begin to offer 1 to 2 hours per week for complimentary one-on-one expansion sessions. And in 2020, my goal is to start a podcast. I've already received offers to interview some of the authors that I feature on Biocadence, and I'm ruminating over the idea of interviews with Biocadence members, so that the Biocadence community can open opportunity for informed interaction. I'm taking a leap in this work rather than re-entering the traditional workforce because I've determined that it's the optimal way for me to offer my love and a synthesis of all that I study to as many people as possible. It feels exhilarating and vulnerable. The support of Biocadence means so much to me. It feels like a symbol of faith that you think there's a place for this work and that I can do it. To become a member, go to biocadence.org.